that were not even worth entertaining. Remember, we tried before. There are political parties here in South Africa who say that they will never ever meet with the economic freedom fighters. So we say whoever must want to constitute a government with us should have an appreciation of what we stand for as a movement. But two, we also said that because we are expected to constitute a government within the 14 days after the official announcement of the results, we do appreciate as the EFF that there are certain areas in detail on policy that can be finalized later on, but the base agreements should be consolidated. And that is an avowed and clear agenda to pursue an agenda that seeks to undo the legacies and remnants of colonialism and apartheid in South Africa. Must be an appreciation on an approach to the land question, on free education, and all these other aspects that we have highlighted in terms of what is expected. So that is basically how we are dealing with these issues. We do not have any coalition agreement with the ANC. Let's deal with this issue of the government of national unity. We are opposed to the government of national unity in as far as it resembles what was concocted in 1994. So if you were to check the outcomes of that government of national unity of Nelson Mandela, it had F.W. de Klerk as an executive deputy president. It had Pik Botha as a minister of mineral resources and energy. It had Andre van Niekerk as the minister of land and agriculture. It had some mayor from the National Party as minister of the environmental affairs and water affairs. And even he had in social development a minister which came from the apartheid establishment. We do not want to form any part of a government with representatives of the white colonial and apartheid system. And we think now that through fair observation and what got to happen with the Democratic Alliance and all these minority white parties, they represent that agenda. That is why the beneficiaries of the white capitalist and apartheid colonial establishment exclusively funded the Democratic Alliance and all these puppet parties. A lot of resources, hundreds of millions, were invested not just to fight the ruling party, the ANC, to fight against the economic freedom fighters. Where you had political organizations who dedicated their energy, their resources, human capital, and everything else that they dedicated was against the economic freedom fighters. We're not going to form part of any government with the Democratic Alliance. We're not going to sit alongside the Democratic Alliance and Freedom Front Plus in government as the economic freedom fighters. And we are not desperate for positions in government. We're not going to do everything in our power so that we're appointed into cabinet or we become speakers of parliament and all of those things. We're not going to sit alongside the land thieves. We're not going to sit alongside the people who got to benefit unlawfully for a very long time from colonialism and apartheid. We're not going to sit alongside them and constitute the government of South Africa. If the ANC wants to choose that road, they can go ahead and do what they did in 1994. And we know what are the consequences of what happened in 1994. Black people and Africans in particular remain on the margins of economic participation in South Africa. Black people more or less stay in the same spaces that they lived under when apartheid had segregated black people to inferior spaces. It's still a lived reality. Racism is still a reality. Poverty of our people is still a reality because of this government of national unity. If there's going to be any government of national unity, there must be clarity of what unity, what are uniting on. And our agenda that we are placing is that it must be the land question that must be at the center of what unites whatever government is going to be constituted. Must be a common agenda to improve the lives of our people, because our people are still on the margins of the economy. It must be an agenda to provide free education. Must be an agenda to protect workers' rights and interests, to enforce minimum wages in all the sectors where they are applicable. That is what the agenda should be all about. It must not just be about position sharing. It must be on principle issues that primarily emancipates and protects the interest of our people. That is the agenda that we are looking into. So we must look into the statement which we issued at the Results Operations Center. We say, as the EFF, that whoever is going to constitute government with us should have an appreciation of what we stand for. You see, I don't know why the convenience of choosing what we said before is being elevated over what we got to say after. I'll give you the practical examples. I did an interview with Caesar of Walsh and said that our ultimate aim would be to remove the ANC completely out of power and block it completely. And within that period, we had even a rising opposition and onslaught against the EFF by the opposition parties whom we had said were going to collaborate with to remove the ANC from power. And we then got to characterize correctly that they are doing so because they're acting on behalf of the Oppenheimers who are giving them money to become the primary enemy forces against the EFF, not even against the ANC. And when we did the debate in Fort Hare University organized by the university and Fort Hare, we did say there on coalitions that whatever must be a coalition government in South Africa must exclude all Oppenheimer puppets. That is what we said publicly. That is our position, that we do not want to have a government that is composited of Oppenheimer puppets and stooges, because their agenda has been revealed as to what they seek to achieve. They want to protect the status quo of colonialism, of apartheid, of economic exclusion of our people. That is what they seek to achieve. So our position has been like that. And the president, you are making reference to a BBC old interview where he spoke about a government of national unity. But in the rock, he did say that if this government of national unity is what Mandela did, you are not part of that nonsense. That is what our position is all about. So refer to us as to like how we have been dealing with all of these issues. That if a government of national unity means that we must have Steenhuisen and Helen Zille who represent a counter-revolutionary agenda as government, we are not going to form part of that nonsense, because we've got now proper historical trace and account of just how disastrous was such an arrangement, where black leaders who are supposed to autonomously take leadership must tiptoe around white people in cabinet. Remember, when you are cabinet and government, if to introduce legislation in parliament, it must be signed off by the minister. So if you have got a minister of land who is a beneficiary of the colonial apartheid land thievery, how are they going to introduce legislation that seeks to distribute land equitably? If you have got mineral resources minister who is part of the establishment, how are you going to transform the minerals sector, which is supposed to be benefiting majority of South Africans, but it's benefiting a handful of few individuals, domestic and global? So it's an issue which we are not going to make the same mistakes that were made by the 1994 group of Nelson Mandela and them, who thought that even when they had the majority that they had to include white people into government. We are not part of that nonsense. In any way, white people vote for one political party, 91% vote for the DA, and then sometimes when they're angry with the DA because there's a black leader, they vote for the Freedom Front Plus, and then they go back to the DA. They've got their own establishment to protect their own interests. We're not part of that. We are happy that majority of potentially progressive black parties can constitute more than 2/3 of parliament, so that when we talk about the land question, we can still be able to amend Section 25 of South Africa's Constitution to permit for expropriation of land without compensation, but also for state custodianship of all of South Africa's land. In the same way, the state is a custodian of all mineral resources and water resources. Composed of the officials of the economic freedom fighters outside of the president. So we give reports to the president and commander-in-chief. So ourselves as the officials, we are the ones who have been meeting. Myself as deputy president, and the secretary general, the national chairperson, the treasurer general, and then some members from the War Council of the EFF, as and when they are available, we then invite them, and then we meet and then state our policy positions, and that is who we are. And then, and of course, from time to time, we appraise the leadership collective that this is where we are. We tactically and correctly voted against ANC governments, not only in Johannesburg. We took the most superior tactic, which we did, was to vote for opposition parties in all the municipalities where the ANC did not have outright majority. As a result, there were a lot of IFP mayors and governments in KwaZulu-Natal which were constituted because of the vote of the EFF. Here in Johannesburg, and Nelson Mandela, it became the Democratic Alliance, and Tshwane as well. But in Metsimaholo, it was Metsimaholo Residents Association. In Tabazimbi, it was Tabazimbi Residents Association. We took a correct decision that let's unplug the ANC out of power, because we know that their staying in power is through the resources of the local state. And once you unplug them from that power, they lose their relevance. And that is what we got to achieve. The ANC is where it is now because of the work of the economic freedom fighters. The ANC was already hovering, even by the way, before the announcement of MK, was in scientific proper polls, was already estimated to could be in the 30s, maximum 40%. MK just came to finish an already dead horse, which was already struggling in terms of the electoral support of South Africa. But the EFF has achieved the most in displacing the ANC from the unparalleled and uncontested electoral support that it has had since 1994. And this is a good thing. It's a progressive agenda which must be consolidated by all progressive forces. Must give us space to consolidate an agenda that will bring about true liberation to the people of South Africa. That is what we stand for.
This is News Live SA.